Charlotte, thanks so much for making time today. We know how busy you are, and I appreciate you responding to my out of the blue LinkedIn message to reconnect, to interview. It's been fun to kind of watch your career progression from multiple brands and within the marketing industry. So I think your story is very valuable to our audience. And as we get into that, would you please introduce yourself for those who don't know you?
Yeah, thanks so much, Mitch. It was great to reconnect. I'm Charlotte Hatterick, and I am marketing director at 8 Elite Light Beer.
Love it. And for all those who were on the boulevard the last couple of years, you guys have had a big
Yeah, last 3 years,
tailgate spot?
actually.
Okay, awesome. So we'll get into 8 Brewing and kind of your role there. That's kind of be the majority of what we talk about. But let's start, kind of pull it back like we always do. Grew up in New York, spent high school in California. What was your SMU origin story? How did you find it, and what made you select it?
Yeah, so having been kind of born and raised in New York City, whole family is originally from the East Coast. Like Texas was never on my radar. I had never
Mm-hmm.
been to Texas. And I went to a small private school in San Juan Capistrano called St. Margaret's. And SMU started recruiting really heavily throughout Southern California. So, there was a couple of reps that came to our high school and told us about the school. And I was like, sounds really interesting. Applied early admission, got in, but it was kind of, still on the back burner. Had applied to some other schools and decided, all right, I'm just going to go check out SMU. So we did, our college weekend, and I just fell in love with the campus and just the overall feeling. I don't know what I was expecting. I was expecting like hay barrels and just like the, whatever your idea of
Yeah,
Texas
yeah,
is,
yeah.
never having been. And it was nothing like I anticipated. Not that that would have been bad, but you have the beautiful trees and like just something about campus felt like what I grew up on the East Coast with.
Mm,
And I had always gone to small schools. And so it just felt like, the right size. It didn't feel overwhelming. I met a couple people, during that weekend that I just kind of became fast friends with. And it was, came home from that weekend and I'm like, all right, mom and dad, I want to go to SMU. So after that, it was, kind of a shoe-in for me.
that's awesome. Yeah, it seems like in a lot of these conversations, the first visit locks in a lot of people. You kind of referenced something that I think is really unique about SMU is that we're in Dallas, and people probably have this stereotype that it is all Texans, a very Texan school. But someone as yourself who had experiences growing up on the East Coast, experiences living on the West Coast, didn't you feel that SMU had kind of this great melting pot of people who are from all over that make people feel comfortable, even though they're in maybe a city they never thought they might spend time in?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think they were kind of touting SMU at the time as like the USC of the South.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, USC and UCLA, the UC schools are pulling in a ton of people from Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
I actually never went to SMU or sorry, never went to USC and checked out the campus, but that was kind of like their pitch at the time. And I think I had 90 in my graduating high school class, and there was like actually 4 or 5 of us that went to SMU. And
Oh, cool.
so, yeah, and then so many of my friends actually that I made at SMU were all Southern California,
All right.
women, different high schools, but it does draw in, I think a lot of people from across the US, and it doesn't feel like it's just the like Highland Park,
Right.
Dallas
And
crowd
I
at
think
SMU.
that's what makes, I think, the network even that much more impactful is because, we'll kind of get into, you've lived and worked in a few different cities. Our alumni are doing awesome things and they're living all over the United States and all over the globe. And you kind of probably walk in and bump into those people. And it's because we're pulling people from all over who want to live elsewhere or maybe even stay in Dallas.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you get on campus, you knew it's going to be a good fit after a visit. And what were you like as an 18 to 20-year-old student? Were you thinking, I'm pre-law, I want to go to med school, I want to just go to school and kind of
Yeah.
take as many classes as I can and see what sticks? What was your mentality like getting to the Hilltop?
My whole family's in the advertising agency. We joke that we could, like, create an advertising agency. My dad was a creative director growing up in New York City. My dad was a creative
Cool.
director. He was on the copy side. My mom was a television and film producer. My brother is in strategy. My aunt's an art director. So, it was kind of the world that
Wow.
I knew. And so, I knew I wanted to kind of go into communications and marketing and advertising, kind of going into school, but I didn't really know exactly how that was going to take shape or
Mm,
what was going to happen. But it was, yeah, just kind of what I grew up around and knew.
so I think when I think of marketing, and I imagine a lot of people think of marketing, it is such a wide bucket of jobs and definitions, right? And so maybe you didn't, but you had maybe some insight on kind of what a specific piece of that looked like for you. Did you know I wanted to be on the brand side? I wanted to work for a massive agency, or I wanted to represent XYZ. Did you kind of have a path on how you wanted to navigate this selection?
Yeah, not really. I mean, again, especially on the agency side, there's so many departments that you can work in, whether that's creative or strategy or production. And I think this is where my career has taken me. It's like I know I'm not necessarily the most creative individual, but I think a very good kind of business acumen and ability to kind of tie teams and pieces and work and all of that together. So that, kind of became ultimately what was more of an account
Mm,
director type role where you're kind of like part business strategy, part client service, part production ops and all those things. And I didn't know that once I was in school, but that's, kind of my first few jobs um, out of school really, kind of helped me mold this vision of, kind of how I could bring value to brands and businesses.
and now that you're, a decade plus in this space, building your career, how do you feel SMU prepared you for this? And what are you seeing now as you're someone who's hiring people that maybe SMU could do better for their marketing students, or in general, what kind of skills do the younger generation, the younger professionals need to learn to be successful in marketing? And
Yeah, I mean, I think and I think a lot of this I got these foundational building blocks from SMU, but really is the ability to work across disciplines
mm,
and, be able to, you're not going so deep on, maybe one element of marketing, but being able to see kind of 360 picture and being able to work on strategy and creative and insights, all these things, I think have I haven't gone deep really just in one particular discipline within marketing, but have
mhm,
a really well-rounded, kind of cross, cross-channel type
yeah.
approach. And I think a lot of the work that I did at SMU and, corporate communications and my minor in sociology really kind of set me up to be able to be flexible and be nimble and work across, a lot of different
And so
things.
I've warned you that sometimes we kind of jump all over the place and we may not follow the exact script. So as we're talking here, I'm thinking, marketing is never going to die, right? Everyone's talking about industries that might get affected by certain technological advances. Marketing, telling the story, there's more brands, there's more, content and everything that needs audience. There's more competition for how things get seen. Where do you kind of see that world evolving? Given your lens, maybe specifically to consumer goods, and then also tie that into kind of like how should talent and people who want to work in this think about building up their skill set to survive for this, ever growing landscape?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be the first to say I need to spend more time learning the AI space. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that, in the world of marketing and business, like AI is ever going to be able to replace the work and just kind of interpersonal and like
Mm-hmm.
you said, that brand building and that voice and all of that you get. But I do think that you can leverage it to you know, build systems and processes to put into place, particularly when you're working for small businesses or
Mhm.
startups and resources are scarce, that we're going to have to learn how to be able to utilize these tools to help us move faster, be smarter,
Mm.
come up with, maybe it's more variations of content that you can test into to see what's resonating with consumers. And I'm the first to say I'm like, my husband works more in the AI space
Yeah.
and he's more in tech. And I'm like, I absolutely am at the point where I need to be able to learn more to be able to utilize it as a tool in my toolkit.
For sure, but it's such a daunting thing because the second you take the time to research and learn it, that's outdated, and the next thing has
There's
been
something new.
developed, right? So jumping back to your career, family is in this space, so you had an insight to it, probably already a subconscious love for it or skill set that you wanted to do. How did you navigate graduation and then getting a job the first time? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're so fortunate. We had a really special year where I was a Pi Phi and the Pi Phi house had just been rebuilt. So we all lived together in the Pi Phi house our senior year, which was just so fun. But it also meant I didn't have a place to live after I graduated. So my parents were like, we're not going to pay for you to just like hang out in Dallas without a job yet. So like come home. You can start looking for a job here. If you end up back in Dallas, great. And started my job search from home. This was 2010. Things were still a little
Definitely.
tough. And my brother was living in San Francisco at the time. And my best friend from high school had just graduated from Cal. And I felt like I wasn't having a lot of success kind of finding opportunities from home. I'm like, I,
Mhm.
I need to just be in the city where I want to find a job to, meet with people, whatever. So packed a bag and kind of moved up to the Bay Area. My friend from Cal still had her apartment for a couple more months, and we were both like, all right, we're gonna make it work in San Francisco. So we were kind of like sleeping on my brother's couch for a little while. I mean,
Right.
literally just doing whatever we could to make it
Yeah.
work, like land some job to be able to make some money to be able
You're
to
right.
stay there. And, Craigslist was still a thing at the time. And so I'm constantly searching Craigslist for job opportunities. And there was a marketing internship with a beer company in the Bay Area and I had applied and I hadn't heard back and this was when I was still in Southern California. Then, fast forward a couple months later, I was in the Bay Area and I'm like, "You know what? I'm just going to swing by their offices because why not? I haven't heard back from them." And popped into the office and I introduced myself, said, "Hey, I applied to this job through Craigslist. I haven't heard back." And
Mhm.
the hiring manager ended up being in the office at that point and I just ended up striking up a conversation with her, and I think
Wow.
I had landed the internship before I left the office,
Incredible.
and, it was a part-time internship, so I still needed, some other work to be able
Mhm.
to afford rent in San
Right.
Francisco, so I was doing some just restaurant serving
Y
jobs and stuff on
yeah.
the side, while balancing, my part-time internship. And then the part-time internship turned into a full-time internship. So I stopped doing some side hustle restaurant stuff on the side,
Yeah.
and then that full-time internship turned into a full-time job.
Is it crazy
And
to think your first job was with an alcohol beer company, and now where you are today is
yeah.
the same? Is that just
Full circle.
full
And it was
circle?
it was kind of a similar, business to 8
Mhm.
in that it was a single beer, was started by a really interesting entrepreneur who created, the brands
Mm.
Sparks and Steel Reserve back
Wow.
in the '90s that he ended up selling to Miller Coors, and so he kind of had a strategic partnership with Miller Coors that we would brew the brand was called, Black Star Beer. He
Mhm.
was like a 5th generation brewer, and so we brewed Black Star through kind of the Miller Coors production facilities and distributed it through their network.
Mm.
So we were, a small team and, primarily distributing throughout the West Coast, and you kind of just get thrown into it,
Yeah.
working on a small brand, on a marketing team, doing everything from their PR to social in the early days to events and trade marketing. And, this has kind of been a theme throughout my whole career, is like finding the mentors and people that you can work really closely and
Mm.
learn from. And anyways, this was back in 2012, and Minot was our CEO founder, and he had an idea to create basically a seltzer at the time.
Mm.
It was called Air, and we launched
Way ahead
Air,
of his time.
and it was just maybe 5 years too early, 6 years too
Wow.
early.
Okay.
And, it didn't end up taking off, and, he was privately funding the whole company, and it was just one of those things, like, came into work one day and the whole company had been laid off, like,
Oh,
kind of just shut the doors
yeah.
on the business. And, again, fortunate enough to have, connection and family in the advertising agency. And so I got introduced to the folks over at an agency called AKQA. They were kind of ahead of all the digital work at the time. They had just won Anheuser-Busch as a client.
Wow.
And, I had a lot of beer experience. So I went over to AKQA to work on the account team for Anheuser-Busch, and I was working on all of the line extensions under the Anheuser-Busch
Cool.
portfolio. So Bud Light Platinum at the time, they had Justin Timberlake as kind of their, spokesperson, and Bud Light Lime and Bud Light Lime Marita. And yeah, that was the very early days, I think, of like consumer CPG brands, especially
Yeah.
alcohol brands, getting
Yeah.
into the world of digital. And, so did a lot of digital work, for the Anheuser-Busch brands, had a phenomenal boss. Her name was Tina. She was a few years older, had been working in the agency world for a while before me. And, we just sparked a really great working relationship and mentorship. And, she got poached by it was called Big Heart Brands at the time. They
Mhm.
eventually got acquired by the Smucker Company.
Mm.
Um, she got poached by them to work on the pet food brands in that portfolio, brands like Milk-Bone and
Okay.
Meow Mix. And, anyways, she ended up bringing me over to work with her,
That's
on
amazing.
those brands. And again, very early days of, more traditional CPG brands getting into the world of digital, getting up on Amazon for the first time, like, building your
Wow.
online presence, really, bringing the retail experience to online.
So you're call it 5 years plus into the industry. Did you know at this time this is the right fit for me? I want to be in the CPG space. I want to continue to lean into this kind of marketing, but also wear multiple hats and kind of be a utility player in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was in an account manager role when I was at AKQA. So you're really kind of the shepherd of all of these teams. You're
Yeah.
pulling all of the work together. You're kind of wearing the client hat and thinking about it from a business lens, and, trying to advocate for, okay, what are we trying to do to address, the brand needs, the business needs, while also marrying that with, like, your creatives are always going to want to do the most creative work that you're doing. So you're, kind of
Yeah.
trying to figure out, how do you uphold creative that you think is going to connect with culture and with the
Wow.
consumer, but, do it in a way that are addressing, true business needs. So that's kind of where, this role in account services on the agency side, and more of kind of the in-house marketing role of where you are
Yeah.
touching the parts of
I
this
was that was
business.
the next question I was going to ask. Can you kind of help me understand or explain kind of the difference between working at an agency that's then servicing a handful of clients versus, or how that works with an in-house marketing team of a brand, and kind of maybe pros, cons, or how the kind of the relationship between the two?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the work that I was doing on the agency side at AKQA in, building out kind of digital media creative, you are, essentially creating what is that consistent online,
Mhm.
look, feel, tone, voice, all of that. Like, what are the channels that you're connecting through? The world of kind of e-commerce was just starting to come online through like Chewy.com and Amazon.com and
Wow.
all those things.
It's
I
wild to
took a
think
lot.
that was just 10 years ago.
I
That was
know,
like
it's
and
crazy.
now it's like
It's
just all we know of.
all we know of now. Yeah, it's wild. Like, so I took a lot of that knowledge that I had built on the agency side and just
Mhm.
took that in-house, frankly.
Okay.
So it meant that, I mean, we had bigger creative agencies when I was working at Smucker's that would do
Mm.
the big campaign work, TV
Okay.
work, all of that. But we were starting to build more of a center of excellence in the world of digital, specifically in-house.
Okay.
So it meant like
Okay.
you didn't have to outsource a lot of that
Gotcha.
to big, costly agencies. And then a lot of what we were doing too is like you kind of become, um, you know, the the internal like shepherd of all of this, but you
Mm.
can pull in more freelance teams, which you can do at a cheaper cost than
Right.
bringing in an agency.
Full
So
time. Yeah.
at the time, again, we were getting brands like Milkbone, all of that set up on Amazon. You're building out these in-depth A+ pages. If somebody is searching Milkbone on Amazon, you want to see all of the product flavors and
Right.
benefits and attributions, and you're working in SEO optimized copy and all of that. And we were able to do that by tapping into freelance designers and freelance
Mm.
copywriters, and which is a much more efficient and cost efficient than bringing in these big creative
Gotcha.
agencies.
Gotcha.
And so
So you
that's where I also started to build a team of like freelancers and get
right.
more involved in just kind of the web development world
Mm.
and the
S
tech and digital side of a more traditional retail brand.
Yeah. So you found your footing, you're starting to kind of build out your resources, the partners you like to work with, really kind of driving and ability to manage teams, and also you have a mentor that you like. You're at Smucker's 3.5 years working on their brands. Then it's time for a move. We go to Austin. What kind of walk us through what obviously what gets you to Austin, some of the roles you have there, but ultimately how did this 8 brewing opportunity come about, and when did you know it was time and that your skill set was ready to take on this endeavor?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was living in San Francisco. Probably TMI, I was on dating apps and happened to connect with somebody who was in town for 2 days on a business trip, and, ended up, grabbing a drink after work one day with him. He was flying out the next day and just really hit it off.
Amazing.
Um, Bumble,
There
actually,
we go.
SMU.
Tied to SMU, of course.
Yeah. And yeah, so he was living in Austin. He'd been in Austin for a long time, and that was kind of just it. And we did long distance for a few months, and I had been in San Francisco going on almost a decade, and so
Mhm.
I was like, all right, it's time for a change, and moved to Austin. And Austin's an interesting place. It's a pretty small town. Obviously, there's a
Totally.
lot of emerging consumer brands in Austin, but a couple of really phenomenal agencies. There's a global agency called RGA that's based out of there that work on a lot of big retail and consumer brands. And so I had the opportunity to, go back to agency side and take a lot of the knowledge that I had in house, working on consumer brands and just, brand marketing and brand strategy, and jump right into a lot of work on brands like Frito Lay. We
Yeah.
had kind of the better for you brands we were working on them. So Sunchip, Smart Food. We did at the time, like Michael's Arts and Crafts store had kind of started to tank. And so they came to RGA. RGA focuses on a lot of just business transformation. So kind of
Mm.
taking industries
Yeah.
and businesses that are maybe on the downslope and really just kind of reinventing them. So
I assume
did a lot of
they didn't do the Cracker Barrel one.
we did not do Cracker Barrel, yeah. But did work on Michael's arts and craft stores, and it's really cool because you walk into a Michael's today and you see the campaign work that we
Yeah,
did still printed on every single bag,
that's
at
so cool.
Michael's. And so,
And so could
yeah,
you
I
see
mean, it's all
yourself working at an agency forever? I mean, imagine the career is a solid trajectory, there's security, you're getting brands brought in, and the work, like you mentioned, is fulfilling. How did you know that, or how did they even pull you out to not be on that agency side forever?
yeah, I mean, I love working on consumer brands. I think that going to, like, advice for, grads is
Uh-huh.
I would probably go agency side out of college because you
Huh.
just have the opportunity to learn from so many different teams and minds, and, like, you're collaborating with strategists and
Yeah.
creative directors and all of this, and it's really kind of drinking from a fire hose, and, like, you learn so much. But at the same time, especially being in an account service role, where I struggled is there's only so much your clients are gonna tell you about, like, really
Mm,
what's going on with the business, and you're kind of at an arm's length, and so there's only so much you can really impact, and I felt like I've just always had more of an opportunity, and I get more fulfillment kind of being in the nitty-gritty of the business side on a day-to-day basis, and really feeling like you can drive a lot of impact and value, being on the business side and brand side.
that makes sense and very well said. And so let's get into 8. How did they find you? Did you find them? What stage
Yeah,
did you kinda jump in, and where are you
totally.
guys
Well,
today?
so the other thing about agency, which I think, has transformed the agency world a lot, was COVID. So COVID hit, obviously everybody was forced to work from home, and, especially being in a kind of a client service and account role, part of your job is also babysitting your creative team a little bit, making sure everybody's delivering stuff on time, and it's really hard to work in that collaborative agency model when you're remote.
Mhm.
And so, I was doing that for a few months, and it's hard. It really is hard not being in person to
Mm.
collaborate with these kinds of
Yeah.
teams. And going back to the relationships that I built early in my career, my boss that took me from AKQA to Smuckers had joined a startup, working on kind of a better for you kids snack brand called Brainiac. And it's all built on, essentially the idea that kids are lacking omega-3s in their diet, which are really important for brain health. And
Mm.
so Brainiac was creating these kid snacks that, had omega-3s in them. And anyway, so she kind of poached me, said, "Hey, I, could really use somebody like you on my team, small startup." And so I went to go work for Brainiac, and work from work for Tina again for a while, and that was probably the earliest stage startup, that I had been on, and gave me a lot of experience, working on early stage startups. And I love my time there, and then one day I get a message on LinkedIn saying, "We're starting a kind of celebrity-founded beer brand based out of Austin, like, we'd love to chat." It was very didn't there was not a lot of detail,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, I mean, I essentially just kind of got poached by the original co-founders at 8 Beer.
Wow.
I think I had, obviously a lot of brand marketing background, but also, beer background. And so I joined the 8 team about 6 months before we launched the brand. And
Wow.
what was really compelling to me about that was I had never been with a brand pre launch.
Mm.
And so that was an opportunity to kind of really be in it from day one. and help build and launch a brand. And fast forward, 4 years, it's been a journey, but
How
one that
how different is the brand that we see today versus those first 6 months you joined before launch?
um there there are a lot of differences and a lot of the liquid is what the liquid was since day one,
Mhm.
and I can jump into a little bit of background on eight, but
Please.
sorry, go ahead.
No, but do yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. So 8 is a super premium light beer. So the category super premium light, the biggest player in this category is Michelob Ultra, and they have something like 75% share of the super premium category
Wow.
in Texas. It's massive. Um, and our co-founders, including Troy Aikman, kind of had an idea during COVID. Troy, he will say he's in better shape than he ever was when he was playing in the NFL, especially during COVID when people were kind of just like kicking back. He's like, I'm going to get into the best shape of my life. But he's always been a guy that's enjoyed a beer every once in a
Yeah.
while and enjoyed a margarita. And never, but he's really like meticulous about what he eats and what he drinks and his regimen, and felt like there really wasn't a light beer that kind of fit his, you know,
Ethos,
lifestyle
yeah.
really. And when you think about it, when you think about the big light beer brands, you have your, Miller Lite, Coors Light, Bud Light. There really hasn't been any innovation in the light beer space at all.
Mm-mm.
And, Troy was like, I'm really interested in doing this. If I don't want to I don't want to make another Me Too light beer brand. Like, I want to do this different. I want to do it better. And all these big light beers that are in your fridge and you see out in bars are brewed with adjuncts. So they're brewed with corn and rice and corn syrup. And so the idea behind Eight was like, how do we create a better for you light beer? And lagers, which are light beers, are actually the hardest beer to brew because you can't hide any imperfections. Like if you think
Mm,
about an IPA, it has a lot of hops or it has a lot of this and that can kind of hide impurities or imperfections. Like
mm.
there's minimal ingredients in light beer, like you can't hide impurities. So it's actually a really hard beer to brew. So it took them 2 years. They partnered with Oregon State University, which
Yeah,
has
I
a
saw that.
renowned brewing department. And it took them 2 years to create the liquid, and it's a hard beer to brew without these kind of adjuncts, frankly, from a cost perspective, from a taste perspective, and so there was a lot of trial and error, and Troy wanted to make sure that it hit the functionals that light beer drinkers care about, which is low calorie and low carb, but something that still tastes like beer. So 8 is an all malt beer, which means it's only brewed with water, malt, hops, and then you have yeast because every beer has yeast. But it's basically the cleanest light beer that you could possibly get.
Amazing.
And so, here we are essentially launching Eight in the most competitive category, one that's just owned by a behemoth of a brand
Right.
in the most competitive light beer state in the US, which is Texas.
Wow.
And so yeah, so the liquid has been the same since day one. The recipe has been the same since day one. Um, but the packaging looks completely different.
Cool.
And a lot of that work actually didn't happen until May of this year,
Mm.
which is kind of crazy. So we launched the brand in a standard 12-ounce can, a short can. We were in that for about 3 years. And anyways, fast forward, Troy ended up bringing in a new CEO a couple of years ago, has been in the beer industry for 30 years. And I think he really just saw some opportunities to set the brand up to really just be a competitor in this space. And one of that is, and I'll show you right now, all of the, other light beers are in this slim can.
Mhm.
So we got rid of our standard 12-ounce can. We had to put in a whole new production line for the
Wow.
slim can.
Yeah.
And so we launched this slim can in May. We also updated all of our packaging, which is a project that I did, to
That's
bring
great.
our functionals, like our calories and carbs, front and center on the packaging.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, even just putting that pint glass as a new brand, people didn't know that we were a light beer. You
Right.
didn't see beer on the package. So we did a lot of work to really just kind of rebuild some of the foundation and groundwork and building blocks of the brand, to really set us up for success in playing in this category. And the other thing too is we launched the brand as 8 Elite Light Lager, which it is a lager. All light beers are lagers, but we did some consumer research. And there was a misconception that lagers are actually like a heavier
Totally.
beer.
I would have thought that for sure.
Yeah, so with this whole rebrand this May, we actually changed the brand name to 8 Elite Light Beer. And we just went live with all of this in May of this year, and we're really already starting to see,
Yeah.
a lot of pull from just some of these, foundational updates.
Well, you can see the passion and your interest for it, just the way you speak about it, and it's fun to hear. Um, I know you have the SMU tent, and what kind of other initiatives, things that and goals that you have, and kind of for the future, now that this kind of rebrand, which I imagine consumed a lot of the team's energy. What are kind of some of those benchmarks you'd like to see this year into the future for eight?
Yeah, kind of plays into a little bit of how the brand has evolved over time. We launched in kind of this better for you space, and so we naturally, kind of started to see the brand in the fitness community, people that obviously take their health and wellness very seriously. So we partnered. We didn't do a lot of mass media when we launched. We launched in a very organic way, grassroots way. We, partnered with a lot of local gyms and kind of really just did more of a community seeding type approach. And, we got a lot of earned PR and media out the gates. Obviously, Troy is a household name. And so we were able to, generate a lot of buzz organically. But what we realized pretty quickly is like these crazy, crazy health enthusiasts, and we're seeing it more 4 years later, are not drinking that much, or if they are drinking, maybe they're having a cocktail when they go out, or they're
Mm-hmm.
switching between an RTD and a cocktail and a beer. Like these are not heavy beer drinkers. So we realized, and also we're going up against one of the biggest light beers out there. We
Right.
really need to broaden our message and broaden our audience base. And so we kind of shifted our strategy from not alienating health enthusiasts, but, kind of keeping them as like the tip of the spear of like,
Right.
kind of that, um, that consumer that people aspire to be, but
Yeah.
try and, capture more of the everyday drinker. So we started kind of seeding the brand in more occasional light beer, when you're baseball and football and
Yeah.
golf and all these things. And what we've seen is that, you put 8 up next to any one of these big light beer brands and, we sell just as well. And so we kind of expanded our strategy to broader reaching light beer occasions. So we sponsored more golf tournaments. We were the exclusive light beer sponsor of the
Oh, cool.
Live golf
Yeah.
tournament over the
Yeah.
past couple of years. And, partnered with SMU to be one of the 3, light or beer sponsors out on the boulevard. Just these occasions where people
Yeah.
are going to be hanging out and having some beers as a way to, kind of broaden that reach and that strategy. And we were talking about SMU Stadium. We've been in the stadium for 2 years, and we also have the tailgate out on the boulevard, and we're selling on par with Miller Lite and
That's
Michelob
awesome.
Ultra. And I think it's, just a testament to the liquid. And, Troy is obviously our co-founder, but we were pretty adamant about day one is that we always wanted the brand to stand on its own and be about the liquid, not just
Right.
Troy's beer. And so it takes more time to do that, right? It's like a
Mhm.
quick, easy solve to just go out
Yeah.
there and use your
Throw Troy out
celebrity
there. Yeah.
compounder as your strategy. Um, but I think over time, it's will hopefully build a long-lasting brand.
Yeah. No, I'm
So
excited to see the growth, and thank you for sharing so much. I've learned a ton about the marketing and the consumer beverage industry, so thank you for sharing all that. And all
yeah,
those listening, make sure to buy 8 whenever you're out. You know, if you're getting married, call Charlotte, get 8 at your wedding. There's no better dance floor beer, I think, to stock. And we'll be in touch and excited to kind of continue to help grow the brand any way we can and advocate for you in your career. So thank you for the time and pony up.
yeah, it's great to catch up. Thanks so much.
Thank you to our sponsors, Sewell Buick GMC, Agility Holdings Group, Probity Advisors, Sound of a Rose, Hilltop Property Tax, Security National Bank of Texas, Boyd, Shackelford, Barnett, and Dixon, Bigham Agency, Life After Ball, SMU Cox School of Business, and Mignon Steakhouse.